Brought to you by Tailored Wealth, helping business leaders live their version of a rich life.
Welcome to another edition of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast, where we cut through the financial noise and help business leaders to make smart, confident money decisions. Welcome to episode number 32 of the Making Sense of Your Money podcast. I'm your host, Dan Pascone. I'm the founder and CEO of Tailored Wealth, and each episode features a trusted voice in the financial world, bringing their expertise to help high achievers to confidently make sense of their money. And today I'm excited to introduce a special guest. We've got with us James Gorzynski, who is the CEO and managing partner of Certified Exit Planners. I'm pretty excited about this discussion. James is a real expert and specialist on a topic that I've written a little bit about lately, and that is strategically exiting your business. So, James, thanks so much for joining us on the Making Sense of Your Money podcast. Pumped to have you today, brother.
Pleasure to be here.
Good, man. Good. So we've got a lot to cover, and I know your expertise is going to be super valuable to our audience. So let's jump right in. Give us a quick 90-second overview of what you do, how you help your clients, and then maybe a little bit of a backstory of how you got into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea of exit planning is basically business strategy. So I like to mention that first and foremost, because a lot of folks hear the term exit and they immediately think that they're being pushed towards the exit. Well, they are indirectly, but not necessarily right now. So a lot of the clients that we help are 2 to 10 years out from an exit, but in reality, the concepts and the strategies can be used with anyone at any phase of their business. And so we really strive to help folks align the three legs of the stool with regard to the CEPA, Certified Exit Planning Advisor credential, through the EPI Exit Planning Institute. And so the three legs of the stool are the financial leg, how is financial performance developed with their plan, and the business leg, how is their business performing, and then finally the personal leg. So the idea is if you have a 3-leg stool, you take one leg of the stool away, it falls over. So the idea of exit planning is using business strategy to align all three of those legs of the stool to accomplish a very cohesive and predictable result for a business owner. And so we help develop those plans, strategies, and implement them. And when the time comes, we help broker the deals as well.
Love that. A lot of stuff I want to unpack there. That was a great summary. So let me ask you this. First off, how'd you get into this field? What made the business strategy and exit planning something that you were attracted to? And then what prompted you to go look at the CEPA designation?
Great question. I originally came from data analytics from quite a while ago, and I had a degree in accounting, and it was very helpful to go through that process and from a background perspective. But ultimately, I kind of moved into more of a fractional CFO role over time and working with smaller and smaller business owners. And most of them legacy businesses run by a few folks, family focused. And then I decided that I wanted to partner up with someone and grow a business. And so I tried to develop a partnership with a few different folks. A few of them did not work out. And essentially, I decided I was going to buy or start my own business. I evaluated several hundred businesses, made a few offers. They fell through. And, I just it didn't work out. I saw some red flags during the due diligence process. And then at that point, I ended up starting a business. I ultimately sold it a few years ago, went through a successful exit myself, and realized that there's a lot of folks that aren't getting the necessary support that they need. My family from both sides, both my side of the family and my in-laws are both small business owners. So at that point, it kind of clicked. I just really wanted to help people make the best possible decisions and really help folks on their advisory board, be a part of their fractional advisory board. So really help work with financial advisors, CPAs, M&A attorneys, business coaches, et cetera. And so through the lens of exiting and operating with the end in mind, it essentially fell into place, and I feel very fulfilled now in my role. So it was a long journey, but it was worth it.
Good for you. Good for you. Sounds like small business ownership and leadership is sort of in your blood, so to speak. So that's a great backstory. All right. So let's talk about what your specific clients look like. Obviously, you're dealing with business owners, right? But what types of businesses are you typically working with? Let's start there, and then we'll talk a little bit about sort of what your process looks like.
Wonderful. Most of our clients, I view them more from a cultural perspective. So that's first and foremost. A lot of folks go into niche industries, and I'm kind of falling into that same path long term. For example, work with a lot of trade service businesses, home services, franchises, as well as dry cleaning, laundromat, landscaping, HVAC, roofing, plumbing, all that kind of stuff. However, we are agnostic technically, and it really starts with the discovery phase where, do our cultures and ethics align? For example, we had a client that we actually had to step away from working with a few months ago, and that was a tough decision. I never like to give up, so to speak, but their cultures and their culture and their ethics were showing their true colors after a few months working together. So that's first and foremost. The second phase is we are working with a little bit more of those industries, so to speak, moving forward. And that's where I came from for as well. So recently working with a lot more medical and healthcare based companies as well. So we are technically agnostic. From a revenue perspective, they're generally between 2 and 30 million in revenue. And
Okay.
so we really help with the growth phase on more of the $2 million to $10 million companies, and we help a lot more with kind of the exit strategies with some of the larger companies, just to give you an idea there as well.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So when is the right time for a business to engage with an exit plan, right? Like you think about exit, to your point, you think about like, hey, I think the traditional mindset is I'm on the doorstep of retirement. I want to go figure out how to sell my business. I want to make sure it's optimized from a financial perspective. And I want to figure out like the most tax efficient way to go about this. And that's a lot of the work that we do with business owners, frankly. But when is the right time to connect with someone like you that's going to help make those three legs of the stool stand up, if you will?
I would say yesterday. You can't bet.
Yeah. By the way, that's when somebody asks me, when do I need a financial plan? That's what I usually say is yesterday. So I got the same answer for you, brother. Go ahead. Keep going.
The reality is that you can't get back time, and the most successful exit plans are a plan. And you can't really execute a plan and formulate a plan if you don't have enough time. So my advice is to look at your exit timeline. Start with your exit timeline. What does it look like? Understand and educate yourself first and foremost. So talking to an exit planner as soon as possible to really just get educational resources. So it's not necessarily an engagement and actually working necessarily on the exit plan now. It's more of, I need to understand more of what this really is and how it can add value to my family, my business, my employees, therefore can frame some of the decisions. That's what's really cool about exit planning is it starts to help business owners rethink how they operate. Thinking about operating with the end in mind, you start making decisions with the exit plan in mind, and it can really form and create the best possible results. So that would be my biggest piece of advice, is just getting information and resources now. And then when it makes sense, pick up the cadence, start working more and more on that exit plan and maybe engage a few years down the road. If you're in that 2 to 5 year window, I'd say soon. If you're in that 5 to 20 year, start with just education and understanding how it works.
So let's say you're in that 2 to 5 year window. Let's talk about the folks that are a little bit closer to this, and whether it be they're ready to retire, or maybe they've just built up a business that's got some value and they want to realize and be able to take some of that value and turn it into personal wealth. And, certainly we see that all the time with business owner clients that we work with. Tell us like a little bit about the process, like what goes into getting a business ready to effectively exit.
Great question. There's a lot of variables, and that's really where we help co-pilot that process. But from a high level perspective, we just start with a foundation. Where are you today? Meaning, what is the business valued? We go through a range of value. We compare and benchmark against similarly sized businesses as well as similar industries. So we're leveraging prior sales, just like comping a house, for example, except a little bit more of an art versus a science. So that's kind of the first phase. The next phase is kind of a discovery phase where we learn a lot more about the culture, the people, nuts and bolts, so to speak, about the business, and really assess the strengths and weaknesses through kind of a SWOT analysis. People are probably familiar with that. And then we really just start working on going through a process where we're providing the most high value for the lowest cost possible. What are the lowest hanging fruit that we can implement and impact value of the business and income to the owner? So the two most important parts in any business owner's world are those two items. They tend to focus on more the income part, but in reality, the value can produce a much better result for their end result, and how it fits into their financial plan, and hopefully close their wealth gap. We talk about wealth gap. Do they know what their number is? What do they need? And, to retire and kind of do what they are passionate about, whether that's family, travel, et cetera. And so then we go into more execution mode for the next phase where we're implementing and trying to strive for certain KPIs, metrics, SOPs, and we bring in other professionals if they're specialists, specialized needs, so to speak. So again, efficiency, highest ROI for the dollar invested possible is how I think and how I like to operate. And then when we're close to a sale, that's usually 12 months out. We're take a step back. Before that, we're also doing pre-exit research and really drumming up some pre-vetted buyers on the brokerage side. So the team focuses on that simultaneously. And then when we're 12 months or less, then we're going to spin up the business, market the business, talk to well-qualified buyers, and then start taking letters of intent to review a few different offers and hopefully take them to the finish line. We don't stop there. After the transition, we're checking in, making sure the transition plans go well. Post-life is great. And we actually have coaches that help with retirement as well. So we try to add value the whole way through the process.
Very cool. Very cool. Very comprehensive. All right. You talked a little bit about value there, which I know is probably a hot button for any of our business owners that may be listening. What typically goes into the value of a business that's looking to be sold? And then maybe what have you seen as far as recent trends, maybe in different industries, right? Because obviously valuations are always on the move based on the marketplace. And, you mentioned, evaluating sort of what similar businesses are trading for at that given time. Give us a little bit of any sort of intelligence you can share with us around general valuations and maybe any trends in specific industries.
Great question. It's I'll give you the best answer I can on that one. However, the two biggest factors with a valuation are generally going to come back to cash flow. And so you're not investing your money to improve cash flow in the future, and you're not increasing the value, then it comes back to the business strategy of exit planning. Then you might want to rethink the strategy there. But the two most important parts with evaluation with kind of a market or income approach is going to be free cash flow, and then it's multiplied by a multiple. There's a lot of other valuation methodologies, but honestly, most of them are pretty convoluted. And they're more used for 50 million plus acquisitions. So for anything under 50, you're probably going to focus on a multiple. So most businesses are going to trade between a 2x and a 4x on a cash flow. So for example, if someone's making 500K profit, adjusted EBITDA, SDE, whatever term you want to use, and you multiply that by 3, then conceptually your business is worth 1.5 million. If it's a little bit more well-run business and it's closer to a 4, then now we're talking about 4 million, and kind of going from that perspective there. The other part is the structure, or what some folks refer to as hub and spoke. If the owner is heavily involved and there's an owner dependency on operations, then you're probably going to be closer to that 2x multiple or 1.5, and therefore you're not going to see the value. So maybe you're still making the same 500K, but the business is only worth 1 million now because the owner is the chief rainmaker, selling everything, running operations. So if you can delegate and create better structure, the multiple goes up, the value goes up. And with regard to your question on different industries, a lot of folks are moving more towards the recurring revenue model. So the easiest example of that is landscaping, for example. If you're doing project-based commercial stuff versus, recurring residential, then most folks are willing to pay for predictable / recurring contracts, et cetera. They're going to pay a way higher multiple on those types of revenues and cash flows versus a project-based system. So that's a pretty strong shift there. And then also lower labor companies as well. So for example, self-serve laundromats or things that are run with an automated perception, and it's more CapEx structured because they can take the accelerated depreciation on the CapEx side on the front end, and they don't have to worry about labor as much, and it kind of runs itself. They're just worried about repairs and maintenance and the real estate side of the transaction. So a couple examples there, but if you want specifics, I'm happy to provide too.
Yeah. I mean, you hit on a point that I've seen myself, both in my own sort of business dealings and with a number of our clients. So let's unpack a little bit like this idea of like the recurring revenue model versus the, let's call it the eat what you kill model, right? Yeah. So I know that the recurring revenue model trades at a much higher multiple. So let's almost compare two sides of the spectrum. You've got a SaaS business that's got contracts that are usually booked at somewhere in the neighborhood of like 2 to 3 year terms, right? So they've got booked revenue for 2 to 3 years at a per client level. And then you've got On the total other end of the spectrum, you mentioned landscaping, so let's just use that one. You've got landscaping where you've got to go out and you've got to actually lock down new clients every season or every year or whatever the case may be. What can like the difference in a multiple be in that really recurring, repeatable revenue model versus the one where, it could have great degrees of variance in any given market, turmoil?
Yeah, using your examples, there's a massive variance. So going back, if we just take the 500K example of income, I've seen some roofing companies or landscaping companies trade at a 1x, 1.2x, 1.5.
Right.
And so now you're talking about a $500,000 business. And then I've seen some recurring that are trading at 10x or 15 or 20x, depending on
Right.
how strong their contracts are and predictable. So you take that business at 500K, and then you take the with not much recurring in the owner dependence, and then you take the opposite of that. We're talking about a $5 million. So a 10-to-1 variance, or 10x differential there. So it can vary quite a bit, and that's really what a lot of business owners can really help long term. So if they are at that 3, 5, 10-year mark, you can start thinking about that and really position yourself for making a lot more money during the time of the sale, and be strategic about the tax savings, as you mentioned before, and really set yourself up for success. And honestly, it's a great thing for the employees too, because if you delegate to a few folks, they feel a sense of ownership on certain things. And so it can really help from a cultural perspective too. And another thing people don't realize is that 80% of your business is generally tied up in your people, and 80% of your wealth is usually from your business. So the 80 number kind of pops up a lot of places. The value isn't necessarily
Sometimes even higher than that. I've seen the numbers at like 90%.
Yeah, exactly. So why not focus on the most important parts? The business being 80% of your value, and then 80% of the business value is the people. So focusing on the two things that can bear the most fruit.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. So great segue into my next question. Let's talk about people for a second. The lifeblood of any business, I certainly believe. You mentioned owner dependency, and I've seen this be very, very typical. I'm sure you have, and a real pattern with sort of like these baby boomer led and operated businesses, which, for those of you that are listening, there is a massive shift happening right now. There are so many businesses that are run by baby boomers that are looking to retire. So whether you are one of those baby boomers and you're looking to get your business sold effectively, this is a great conversation. Or if you're potentially someone that wants to invest in a business, there's a lot of opportunity out there right now. In fact, I'm looking at a couple myself. I don't mind sharing that. So the owner dependency, what do you and your team usually do and recommend for that baby boomer business where, sure, they had probably good people working with them, but the day-to-day starts, stops, and ends with the owner? How do we get it so that there's less reliance on that owner? Because to your point, you pluck that owner out, the value and sort of what that business is able to do day to day gets significantly reduced. So let's talk a little bit about that process.
Yeah, great question. Every business is going to have more of it's highly customized. So it's going to vary quite a bit, and it's going to depend on personality. So for example, if someone is open to tech and they see the value in it and think it's cool, but don't really understand it, then, that might be a good situation where you bring in some AI help and someone who can expedite procedure and formulate some value add there. A CRM system, I can't tell you how often I run into a company that doesn't have a proper CRM system where you can follow up, you can do scheduling, things of that nature. I find it incredibly valuable. I mean, I did when I was running a business myself, and still do to this day. So I think, again, going back to the low-hanging fruit, those things can add a lot of value very quickly, increase efficiency. Doesn't mean you're necessarily, losing any employees. They just have additional time to spend on other things like revenue-generating items like sales. The other thing is implementing SOPs, sales strategies. I find it very interesting that a lot of business owners know how much value they provide to their customer and all the great customer reviews, but they can't describe their ideal customer profile. So kind of going through a sales playbook and understanding, are they spending the proper amount of time in the right areas to create the most probable and predictable revenue from an ROI perspective on their sales and marketing strategy. So that's another thing, empowering some of their employees to do some new things or bring some ideas to the table, and through delegation, and, start with the lowest risk item first. don't delegate the most important thing that you do or the thing that you do best, or maybe the thing that you do very, very well and enjoy. So I encourage people to kind of look at it from a quadrant system, you know, in one part of the quadrant, things that you do really, really well and you really enjoy, don't touch those items. Things you don't do very well and you really don't like to do, and they're low risk, maybe that's something you would want to kind of delegate to someone else and bring someone in. And there's always folks that we can bring in through specialized staffing agencies. So for example, we have relationships with trade and service staffing. That's all they do. So they can help with office work or field work. And then finally, even restaurants, we have a specialized restaurant staffing recruiter. That's a tough business. I've been in it before as well. So just bring in additional help, some resources to really improve the structure of the company and take some things off the plate of the owner. And what's funny about it is sometimes the business starts to run so well that the owner doesn't want to sell. So I view that as a success.
There you go.
Happened multiple times where a couple of years go by, they're collecting mailbox money, so to speak, and now they're making a little bit less because they had to spend a little bit more on their structure, but their business is worth a lot more, and they're not touching the day to day, and now they're spending more time with family and friends. So it's an interesting result for a lot of folks that kind of understand how much potential there truly is.
Yeah, you hit on a couple of things that I'm super, super passionate about. So number one, I can see that happening, right? Where you guys come in and you help folks to get focused on the things that they love to do and they're really good at. And maybe they were looking to sell the business because frankly, like half of their time was tied up in stuff that they don't enjoy doing, right? And listen, anybody out there that's running a business, like the greatest advice I would ever give is stick to and spend as much of your time as possible doing the things you love to do and that you're really good at, and then find other talented people to do the rest. And to your point, a lot of times people just look at that as price tags. Those are investments, right?
Absolutely.
And there's so many opportunities to get inexpensive, really, really good staff today, as long as you sort of spec it out and plan it properly. The second thing you touched on, which is something I'm also super passionate about, is this idea of sort of flexible work. I call it hybrid retirement, right? That's a concept we write a lot about and talk to about our clients a lot of times, which is essentially being able to do whatever it is, whether you're running your own business, whether you're volunteering, whether you're being a consultant, it doesn't really matter. But the idea is, as you graduate later in life and as you've been in the workforce for a while, you get to a place where you can start to define what you want your work to look like. It can be super purposeful. So whatever you're really passionate about, whether it's your business or the nonprofit that you volunteer at, it doesn't really matter, but structuring a plan to allow you to spend your working hours the way you want to, while having a lot more flexibility to spend time traveling with your family, playing golf, whatever it is you like to do outside of work. And that's a concept that, James, I'll tell you, I've seen it firsthand with our clients, and it just gets me jacked up talking about it, because I've seen how much of a lifestyle shift that can be for people and how enjoyable it can be, especially as you get to, I'm not talking about like when you're 80 and you want to go sit on a beach. I'm talking about people still in their prime working years, but having a much higher degree of flexibility and enjoyment with their work. So really, really cool concept.
Absolutely. And I like what you've touched on there. It's not necessarily focused on when folks think of more of the third or fourth quarter of their life. When you kind of think about the timeline, this happens a lot with folks that are in their 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. The age does not matter, and it really comes back to their passion and what drives them. So the amount of much they can relax and just do what they love to do, that's the huge value and driving factor that we see, and we really like to hone in on that for sure.
Cool, man. All right. One more, then we're going to shift gears a little bit. What are the biggest challenges? I think you've probably hit on some of them already today, but what are the biggest challenges that businesses and business owners typically face when you start your engagement with them?
Yeah, great question. I think the first thing that it's very difficult to essentially show exactly what we're going to do. It's more of a concept. So a lot of times we're using visuals and graphics and kind of concepts in general. So a lot of folks will kind of struggle a little bit until we start talking about things and diving into the discovery and the assessments, and then it clicks. The light bulb goes off. And so that's one of the things that we're really passionate about talking about, what a lot of them kind of struggle to see initially, but once they're kind of in the program, they really see it. and understand the value. So that's very, very fulfilling from our perspective and theirs as well. I would say the other thing is just the clarity on things. So, and that's what we're there to help with. So there's a lot of things going around in their head, both personal, business. And so we really prioritize and help them organize those thoughts. And so that's what we're there for. We're here to kind of bring in folks that can help with specialized needs, with different parts of businesses, different industries, different personality. But it's to boil it down to their most ideal exit, and then working towards that and massaging and evolving it over time. So I'd say just the amount of things that are kind of in their head, and we're just going to get it down to one piece of paper and we're going to boil it down, is probably the biggest struggle that they have initially. And that's where there's a lot of movement in the first 30, 60, 90 days. So we have different checkpoints there. And I'd say after 90 days, there's a lot of excitement and momentum. And so that would probably be the biggest thing. They're just not sure on all the exit options. There's not a lot of clarity. There's a lot of questions. And that's why I mentioned the resource and support portion previously, is that, that's what we are. We view ourselves as a resource first. And then, yes, we help and consult as well on these specific scenarios, but we want to educate people first and really help them and kind of help guide them through that process. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, that's great. I imagine that exercise creates a high degree of clarity, which is really important, especially when you're starting an engagement. So that makes a lot of sense, brother. Great stuff. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit now. We're going to get to know you a little bit more. So James, you are officially entering the lightning round. So we never tell our guests about this ahead of time. So it's meant to just be super organic. So all we ask here is that you just share the first thought that comes to your head. Could be a one-word answer. Could be, a long drawn out thought. It doesn't really matter, anywhere in between. You ready?
Sure.
Let's do it. All right. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
One meal for the rest of your life. What is it?
Italian pizza.
Italian pizza. Do you have a favorite pizza spot?
I don't know the name of it. I forget. It was in Italy.
Oh, it was in Italy. Okay, you can't go wrong with that. But remind the audience, where are you located, James?
Charlotte, North Carolina.
Charlotte, North Carolina. Okay, sounds good. So we're going to have you come up to Connecticut for some New Haven pizza at some point in time. We'll do that. All right. What is one tool or piece of technology, so it could be hardware or software, other than your computer or your phone, that you can't live without?
Piece of technology, I would say, it sounds weird, but TVs or screens. It helps me visualize things quickly.
Screens, multiple screen guy. Okay, that makes sense. Yep, me too. I got 3 going right now, and we're actually moving into a new office space. I might even add to that. So I'm with you on that one. Do you have a favorite quote or phrase about business or success?
I use the phrase all the time, and it's partially borrowed from Stephen Covey and Warren Buffett. Operate with the end in mind.
Love it. Love it. Big fan of both of them. So I can't go wrong there. Do you have a favorite book on business or success?
I would say the Walking to Destiny was great. Some of the EOS books, Traction was wonderful.
Yep. I'm a traction guy. Yep. I'm with you on that one. Okay, good. In fact, I've read all the EOS books. And I would highly recommend anyone that's even just leading a business unit, read the Traction books. Start with Traction, or start the EOS books. Start with Traction. How to Be a Great Boss is great. The Entrepreneurial Leap is great. So good ones there. Do you have a personal hack that you can share with the group that you live by?
Personal hack to retrain your thought. And so I tend to think of different things at different times. And so the most accessible piece of technology I have is always my phone. And so I have a task board on my phone. So when I think of something, every time I have a conversation, I hang up the phone. I've trained my brain to then, do I need to put that in my task board? And so just because I know I'll forget it. The other thing, from a personal and physical perspective, I always put things at the front door. So I'm going to trip over them if I need to take them somewhere. And so it's one of the things that
you and I use 2 of the same ones, man. I love it. You and I use 2 of the same ones. So I go as far as, what I do is I use 2 different functions within my phone. I have Siri either set reminders for me if there's something that I want to do at a specific time, or I have an integration between Siri and I use Notion as like the platform that we keep all of our intellectual property, our notes, our to-dos, and all that stuff. And I have a setting set up that I can just speak to my phone and it will then send something to my to-do list. So I love those. Those are great ones. And putting the stuff at the front door is a great one as well, because I used to always forget stuff that I wanted to bring to work, and now it's at the front door, so you can't forget it. Great ones there. Really, really good. All right. What's one bucket list item that you've already accomplished?
Owned and sold a business.
Perfect. Love it. Congratulations on those. What's a financial milestone that you're personally working towards?
From a personal like income perspective or just
Anything, any milestone that you're working towards.
oh, okay. I want to hit the financial freedom point where that I can do what a lot of the things that I'm kind of conveying with business owners. So for example, I've set a goal where I'm traveling at least once a quarter to a place I've never been.
Love it. Love it. That's awesome, man. Great goals to have, great things to plan for. We love seeing people do the things that they really enjoy in life with their money. Last one, if you could give one piece of advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Network, network, network. I think I spent a lot of time working very hard in specific jobs and for other folks. And I was in a very narrow hallway doing really wonderful things for a small subset of people. And I got a lot of great feedback and some good mentoring. But the part that I did not do well when I was younger, and I think I would have been exposed much faster to what I'm doing now and what I love to do if I would have talked to more people, because I didn't know that M&A brokerage was even a thing until well after I originally, or excuse me, 10 years before. So I would say network, talk to more people, learn what they do, spend time and listen. Listening is wonderful. Observation and listening, you'll learn so much of the world around you. And I think you're more likely to end up hanging out and interacting and doing business with people that you love. So I think that's the other thing. Say no if they don't fit your culture and your values. So that was a lot of things. Sorry, but
That is such good advice. Yeah, no, that's such good advice, man. Like everybody tells you to network, right? But for the listeners out there, what I like that James said is network with intention to get to know other people, learn about what they do and listen. That's the effective way to network, right? There's so many people that are just networking for frankly selfish means. But if you network with the general intent to get to know other people, you learn so much. And not every connection is going to be a home run grand slam for you and your career or your business. But if you do enough of them, you'll find ones that are, and you'll always learn along the way. I mean, every new person I speak to on a weekly basis, and I have the luxury of speaking with a lot of new people every week, I learn something from them. So I love your thoughts on that. James, thanks so much for sharing your time and your insights with us today. That was a lot of fun. That's it for the episode. You can find our podcast along with our newsletter and our YouTube channel, all free at makingsenseofyourmoney.com. And as always, prioritize your version of a rich life. James Gorzynski, thanks for joining us, brother.